Hello and welcome to this course on the principles of user experience and user interface, or UX and UI for short. UX and UI are all about people. Everyone wants to experience the latest technology, but they don't want to spend too much time or strain their already busy minds doing so. Therefore, if you want a website to be successful, it is crucial to get both correct. This course will give you an introduction to UX and UI. There is a lot more to be learned about these disciplines. However, the course will give you a sample and an understanding of what is involved. The course is structured around a situation that Adrian and Mario are having with their Little Lemon restaurant website. The website was designed and coded without UX and UI principles applied to the online elements of ordering food for delivery and reserving a table in the restaurant. Throughout the course, you'll be guided through the process of UX and UI methodologies to resolve one of these issues. Ordering food online from their website via a mobile device. The other issue, reserving a table, will be the theme of your final course assignment. That's just a brief overview of what the course will be like, but it does serve to illustrate some of the tasks UX and UI professionals encounter. During the course, you will be introduced to these and the many other tasks that form the duties of a UX and UI professional. In particular, you will learn to differentiate UX and UI, use Figma, one of the most popular design tools today, evaluate interactive designs, create a contemporary user interface. You will also learn to create a low-fidelity design, simple and low-tech concept. All you need for that is a pen and paper, and transform it into a high-fidelity design, which is functional and interactive and very close to the final product. And finally, create a prototype. Don't worry about these terms if you're not familiar with them. You will cover them throughout your journey in this course. In other words, in the course project, you will get to create a prototype or a mock-up of the final proposed design, which can be tested to validate ideas and design assumptions made. But you can relax. You're not expected to become a UX or UI professional right now. There are many videos in your course that will gradually guide you toward that goal. Watch, pause, rewind, and rewatch the videos until you are confident in your skills. Then consolidate your knowledge by consulting the course readings and put your skills into practice during the course exercises. Along the way, you'll encounter several knowledge quizzes where you can self-check your progress. Just like you, there are a number of people considering a career as a UX/UI professional, and the course discussion prompts will enable you to connect with them, your classmates, as you move through the materials. It's a great way to share knowledge, discuss difficulties, and make new friends. To be successful in this course, it is helpful to commit to a regular and disciplined approach to learning. You need to be serious about your study and, if possible, map out a study schedule with dates and times that you can devote to attending the course. It's an online self-paced course, but it does help to think of your study in terms of regular attendance at a learning institute. In summary, this course provides you with a complete introduction to UX and UI. Best of luck in your learning journey.
At Meta, we have 3.5 billion people who use our products every day. They use them in various different ways. This is what the role of the product designer is, to remind the rest of the cross-functional teams of the reason why we're building the things that we're building. Yeah, half of the planet. No pressure, casual. I'm Petra, and I'm a product designer at Meta Reality Labs, and I live in London. I think that people very often think that product designers spend all of their time designing. That is actually not true. Product designers spend most of their time talking to people, most of their time in documents, and actually thinking holistically about the product. Every day I get surprised by how users actually interact with our products. Very rewarding to realize that you were wrong in your assumptions. It's kind of humbling. to see that. And obviously, when you're building global products for so many people, you have to remind yourself that not everyone are going to be using the products in the way that you thought about them. We are constantly talking to the people that we're building products for. It's probably one of the best part of my work, to be honest. These conversations remind you that you are not your user. I get surprised absolutely every day of how people interact or decide to interact with whatever we're building. Throughout my life, I have been exposed to software. The reason was quite banal, I think. I wanted to Photoshop myself next to Orlando Bloom when I was 12. So this was my first exposure to Photoshop. From that point onwards, I kind of spiraled into other types of software and taught myself how to code as well. When I graduated from illustration, I was already experimenting with new technologies like Connect, some interesting tech like Arduino. I also had a Raspberry Pi, and I was just building interactive experiences. So this very naturally led itself into a role of a digital designer at the time. My first role was designing for a platform as a digital/graphic designer. And from that point onwards, I went into front-end engineering. I would say that I wasn't the best engineer. I was more interested in the user journey, how products work, what are the problems that these products solve. So it was a very natural shift from being a front-end developer to becoming a product designer and actually playing on my visual skills a little bit more. I work between web, mobile, VR, and augmented reality. So it really depends on the project that I have at hand today. Generally, the day starts with me catching up with emails and catching up with whatever has happened whilst I was asleep. Meta is a global company, so a lot can happen during the night. After an hour or so, I would then catch up with my lead engineer and my product manager, and then the day will start from there. So we work in very cross-functional teams. That means that you might have meetings with someone from content design, who are the people who are looking after our written content. Or you might be working with someone from marketing if you have a new feature that is coming up. Or you might be working with your engineers, which as a designer is probably most likely. I think engineers and designers do sometimes tend to have a disconnect, particularly because designers might not know the code base, might not understand the engineering limitations. And on the opposite side, engineers might not really know what the design process is. What's important is to, from the very beginning, build a very strong partnerships between the two functions. I would actually say whenever, as an engineer, you're starting to work with a designer, don't dive into the work straight away. Pause and take some time to understand this person. Talk through the processes that you're both comfortable with. And after that, dive into the more technical aspects of the work, like requirements or dependencies, or discussing the actual functionalities that you're going to be building together. Don't be afraid of designers. I've seen that quite a few times where front-end engineers tend not to contradict their designers. But feel free to have a conversation. If you can see that your designer, that the design does not fit the requirements or is not going to be easy to execute, or there's a less costly way to execute it, go to your designer, speak to them, have a conversation. Designers are here to help you. We are partners in this endeavor, and we're ultimately going towards the same goal. So it's absolutely vital for us to collaborate. Good luck on your journey of becoming an engineer. It might feel daunting at times, but stick to it. It is worth it when you see how you impact the life of people who use your products.
Hello and welcome to this course on the principles of user interface and user experience, most commonly referred to as UX and UI. Adrian, one of the co-owners of the Little Lemon restaurant, noticed they are not getting many orders or reservations on their website. He likes the old look and feel, but recognizes something needs to be done. Adrian knows you are interested in user experience and user interface, or UX and UI for short. He asks if you would like to redesign the Little Lemon website. This is a great opportunity for you to learn and put your skills into practice. You accept Adrian's invitation to redesign the website, and you just can't wait to learn more about UX and UI to help Adrian and to explore careers in the field. In this video, you will learn how to differentiate between the disciplines of UX and UI and identify the typical roles they fulfill in the product design lifecycle. You'll also identify the careers for a UX or UI designer in different sized companies. As an aspiring UX/UI professional, it is important to know what each discipline is and what kinds of jobs there are in the field. Let's consider the Little Lemon restaurant and how UX and UI might be contextualized and differentiated within that organization. First up, UX. UX is not just about the Little Lemon website or app user interface. UX is about a customer or user experience with the Little Lemon business as a whole. The staff, the service, the food, the decor, the menu design, restrooms, and of course the website and apps. However, we will focus on the UX process applied to the design and redesign of the Little Lemon website. UX is about asking questions. Questions like, what are the customer's needs? What's stopping them from achieving their goals? How intuitive is the website to use? Can users order food easily? Can customers get from one section to another quickly and efficiently, like selecting dishes and customizing their order? And it's about providing answers to those questions in the product. Now on to what the users see, the UI. The Little Lemon website in this context is the primary point of contact for the users. UI provides information that users first see and then interact with. Elements like type, color, buttons, shapes, icons, and images. Successful UI design has to do with grouping and assembling these elements in a way that helps users achieve their goals quickly and efficiently while looking beautiful and adhering to the brand of the restaurant. UX and UI both inform each other, and when used together, they can combine to make beautiful products that are a joy to use. For example, a UX designer will research and identify needs and iteratively propose solutions via prototypes. A UI designer will create logical and beautiful layouts and interactive flows informed by a systemized design library. It's worth noting that the roles within UX and UI can be as nuanced as the discipline itself. In different companies, these roles will mean different things. In a smaller company, a designer might need to fulfill both the roles of UX and UI, researching user needs, designing solutions, and coding them up. Whereas in larger companies, there may be specialized roles within the disciplines. For example, a UX researcher may focus on just research, and a UX copywriter may focus on the content, words, and the tone of voice used in your product's copy. Some UI designers may focus entirely on the upkeep and management of the design system, a repository of interactive elements and components, whereas others may specialize in accessibility, making sure to provide the best possible experience to users that may have impairments. What is certain is that knowing what is involved in each of these disciplines and applying them appropriately can give way to beautifully designed and usable products. Throughout this course, you will follow the redesign of the ordering element of the Little Lemon website, where UX and UI principles are applied. Then you will have an opportunity to apply them yourself in the table reservation element in the final course project. In this video, you learned about key differences between UX and UI and some job roles that exist in the product design lifecycle. You also learned about careers for a UX or UI designer in different sized companies.
Product managers don't tell designers or engineers to do this. We focus on bringing everyone together on a strategy that we believe in. So we are very collaborative, and we really value what developers think, what engineers think, because we are a team and we are trying to build this together. Hi, my name is Jason. I am a product manager at Meta. I work in the Facebook web app and web platform team. So my day is filled with, I think, three core things. The first one is reading, understanding what is happening with the product, with the market, with leadership, and with other teams. I have to sort of have a really good idea of what is happening in order to lead to section number 2, which is thinking. That happens in writing often, and it's really crystallizing like product strategy, figuring out what the communication is, trying to figure out what the plan is for the entire team, or setting goals. The third part is collaboration, which usually happens meeting other people. I will send information via a written document, but a lot of times it is getting in a room with an engineer, working through a problem together. And it's like figuring out, hey, this is a product strategy. What does it take to build this? What does it actually take to make this happen in H1 or this year? And how do we bring it to life? What are sort of the trade-offs? So those three things are what usually take up my time as a product manager. If you think about technical skills, product managers actually have less technical skills than a lot of the people we work with. The main one that I use is analysis. I actually rely on the data scientists to pull and do a lot of the hard numbers, but I have to digest and understand what it means. Collaboration is a core skill set because what we are doing is working with engineers to make the product come to life. So a lot of the soft skills include written communication and verbal communication. It's really, can we bring our ideas and thinking and help other people understand and come along for the ride. Product managers with engineers and all of our other stakeholders, we are building amazing products. And that in itself is just really hard to do. So first we have to actually know what's a winning product and have a clear strategy making that happen. That is challenging in the absolute best way. And that's what makes this job really fulfilling. I work with product designers and engineers very heavily. They are two of my top stakeholders. With product designers, I am really bringing the product strategy and creating a visual representation of what that looks like. So if I were to give an example, let's say I have this concept and strategy that we really need navigation to be more persistent and so people can access some of their stuff. I will write that as a strategy. The product designers will then visualize that into an actual menu. What are the pixels? How big is it? What are the actual colors? Should we show notification or not? And they've taken the product strategy and turned this into a visual item. We then together work with the engineer to build that menu. You know, the menu the designers have put and say it's like 80 or 100 pixels or whatever the heck it is, we'll actually put that into code. So the three of us will work very closely together to realize this product, which occupies like a very important role in the broader strategy. So some things that an engineer could focus on to become a very effective engineer. First, you have to master the craft of being a good engineer, which is excellent coding and excellent execution. In addition to that, collaboration is very important. The product designer, the product manager, and the engineer, we all are working together to build an amazing product. Communication goes a really long way. When you're working in a team, communication would really help us make sure we're moving together, and as a result, helps make sure we build a phenomenal product. Building things is incredibly fulfilling. There's nothing like that feeling when you launch something and people love it, and you know that you built this. And that's what you'll be able to do when you finish this course.
Adrian, one of the co-owners of the Little Lemon restaurant, manages all things related to product. He asked you to carry out the redesign of the Little Lemon website following a UX/UI process. Throughout this course, you will learn the theory underpinning UX and UI and apply your newly learned skills to redesign parts of their website. In this video, you will learn about the context in which you will explore UX and UI. You will also get an overview of how the redesign process will happen. Finally, you will get a description of what you will be able to accomplish in the final course project. In the context you will be working on, customers are having issues using the Little Lemon website to order food for delivery and reserve a table. Throughout the course, you will learn UX and UI principles and best practices used to identify and get a better understanding of these issues. You will follow the redesign process of the online ordering element with the customer in the forefront of all decision making. Then you will explore a solution and test it to make sure that customers find this element intuitive and enjoyable to use. After learning about what's involved in the UX UI process, it'll be your turn to practice the skills you learned and create a solution for the table reservation element. You will receive an assignment outlining what needs to be produced at the end of the course. What you will produce at the end will be an interactive element that you will be able to showcase to your prospective employers. You will start your work based on data gathered from customers while they use the website. Throughout the course, you will learn about UX and UI principles and best practices that you will apply to your project designing the table reservation interactive element. The reserving a table element will broadly contain features the customers can select, such as number of diners, a date and time, and a special requirement comments box. After these are selected, the customer will add their details. These include name, phone number, email address, and credit card details. When they have completed these stages and confirmed the booking, they will receive confirmation on screen and via email. This will be your creation, so as you go through the process, you may include any additional features that you find necessary. On completion of the course, you will apply the methods and processes to design the table reservation process of the mobile Little Lemon website for users. Adrian learns that his customers are frustrated that they can't easily book a table or order for delivery from the website. He knows that these are issues he wants to resolve so they can gain more business. You jump in to help Adrian achieve his business goals by applying the principles of UX UI. You will start exploring UX and learning how following a UX process will enable you to solve these issues from the user's perspective, increasing sales and keeping customers coming back for more. In this video, you will learn to define what UX is and recognize that UX is a process with several stages. UX means user experience. It includes everything related to all the interactions that a user has with a company, its services, and products. How does something like a remote control, a phone, an app, or a website feel to use? How do you feel before, during, and after interacting with a product? Can users achieve what they want easily from a product? Does the interface provide a smooth, enjoyable experience, making your users feel in control? Why do customers keep coming back for more? Let's explore this a little further now. Don Norman, one of the most famous researchers in the field of design, coined the term UX. He was concerned with the experience customers were having with a product. How could users find the product in store? How could they get it home? What was it like opening the box? How easy were the assembly instructions? What did it feel like to use? Was it intuitive and enjoyable? UX is about all of this. Have you ever used an appliance and you didn't know whether it was on or off? Or used an app where you had a hard time getting what you wanted? These are problems UX can solve. A product's features need to be discoverable so you know what you are looking for. Successful product design also needs to converse with you. It needs to give you feedback on your actions. You don't want your users to be confused about why nothing happens when they click or tap a button. Considering and designing for the user and not what you think the user wants are key to successful UX. Take a minute to think about something or some product that has been designed intuitively and one that makes no sense at all to use. How would you improve that design for all users, regardless of their age and ability? What would you change? To understand what UX really is, it's important to recognize that UX has been refined into a process which you will explore in more detail later. But let's get a quick overview of it so you have an idea of what the process involves. The process is iterative. You may have to go back to previous steps to adjust your design to suit the customers and business goals several times. If you are designing something, you observe people doing the task. And from that, you can identify problems that they may have completing that task. You then may have some ideas to work on. Then you prototype your intended solution and test it. This is the process in summary. You repeat each of these stages and the steps within them and test your design again and again until you have something that is usable and enjoyable for everyone. Following these steps and considering best practice methods and behaviors in current web and product design will help you redesign the order form of the Little Lemon website. In this video, you covered what UX is, what the stages are, and how you can apply them to the successful redesign of a product or service by considering your users from the start. After speaking with Adrian, you realize that the fact that customers are not able to easily place an order or reserve a table through the Little Lemon website is a usability issue and not only a design issue. As an aspiring UX UI designer, you will need to employ methods to help frame your thinking to deliver the best experience to users. In this process, you will gain a better understanding of customers and their frustrations. You need to think about aligning the customer's goals with Adrian's business goals. In this video, you will learn to recognize UX goals, how to consider applying these to your thinking in the user design process, and to identify Nielsen's usability quality components. You will now cover usability, an essential concept in UX and UI design. Usability gauges how intuitive or easy a product is to use. Jacob Nielsen's, a highly recognized professional in the field of usability, proposes that you can evaluate usability through 5 usability components. They are learnability, efficiency, memorability, errors, and satisfaction. Let's start with learnability. When his customers are trying to order for delivery, Adrian wants the process to be easy to learn from the first time they do it. The second component is efficiency. What if users want to change their order? Is it easy to do and can they do it quickly and efficiently? Third comes memorability. What if a user gets distracted? Is it easy to remember where they were when they return? How quickly can they find where they were? Next, good usability needs to consider errors. What if a user makes a mistake? The design should provide solutions to these mistakes and address them before they happen. Finally comes satisfaction. Is the website pleasant or satisfying to use? Do users enjoy using it? Is it easy to use? Measuring user satisfaction is not an easy task. However, you know how it feels when you use an intuitive and well-designed product. It helps to think about the usability quality components at all stages of your design. If you consider them from the outset, you will solve problems earlier in the process. You now need to think about the people using your design and consider ways in which your design can be satisfying and enjoyable for them to use. When you use a product, you can go through a range of emotions, from bored to happy, to excited to confused, and sometimes giving up. Considering your user's experience goals early is a methodology that you can employ to help remember the ever-changing nature of your user's experiences. You can organize your experience goals into desirable and undesirable aspects. Let's think about your customer and their goals. You want your product to be enjoyable and fun to use. You also want your design to be relaxing, satisfying, and efficient. You will surely want your customers to be engaged, motivated, and stimulated. And another important point, you won't want them to have to think too hard to use your product. It should be intuitive. On the other hand, you don't want your website or app to be slow, confusing, or complicated to use. And you don't want your customers to feel bored, frustrated, or stressed. Customers need to easily find the correct part of the site to accomplish what they want. How can your solution be helpful without being patronizing or presumptive? For example, when reserving a table at Little Lemon, customers need to know if the table is available and how long they can reserve it for. Can your design provide this information to the user so they can feel supported and empowered? Is the information presented clearly without being annoying? Suppose a customer is using crutches and would like to sit by the door. Could your design potentially satisfy this requirement? If not, can the user find this information easily enough if they need to? Although you have not implemented any design yet, you are considering your users' goals and needs and thinking about ways you can help them satisfy these through your design solutions. In this video, you learned to recognize the importance of UX goals, how to consider applying these to your thinking in the user design process, and to identify Nielsen's usability quality components. These are key methods to inform smart and enjoyable designs. Remember, it's important to take them into account early in your process to try to avoid problems before they happen. You are eager to start working on the Little Lemon website, and you know you need to follow a UX process to accomplish the task successfully. So, you begin to investigate the stages of UX design. In this video, you will recognize the steps of the UX process and identify how you can apply them. Let's start exploring how following a UX process can enable you to create a better website for Adrian, increasing sales and keeping customers coming back for more. UX is a very process-driven discipline. There are several different models that you can follow when carrying out a UX design or redesign. While there is no one-size-fits-all approach, following some key steps will help ensure the successful implementation of a rich user experience design. Let's cover the UX process and how you will apply it to the redesign of Little Lemon's website throughout this course. And don't worry, it's okay if you don't know what some of these terms are now. We will go into more detail later. The 5 stages of the UX process are empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. It is important to keep in mind that UX is an iterative process, which means you may have to go back to the previous stage to adjust and refine it. Let's start with the empathize stage. You get permission to interview and observe Adrian's customers at various stages of trying to complete tasks on the restaurant website, like ordering a meal for delivery. You want to listen to their frustrations. The key here is to understand your users' needs. From the results of this research, you can create a persona that you can then reference throughout the design process. You will also create an empathy map, a scenario and journey map to empathize more with this persona. This will also keep your ideas grounded so to avoid making assumptions. The second stage in the process you will follow is the define stage. You collate and distill all of the information collected from your users and identify the key problems and needs that they are having. You also prioritize these frustrations or pain points by importance. You now know who your users are, what their frustrations are, and what problems you need to solve. You will create a user needs statement that clearly outlines the needs your users have. Once you know the issues and who you are solving for, you can ideate. Ideating is about generating ideas. You can do this by sketching, brainstorming, mind mapping, and even handwriting notes. The key here is to keep an open mind and not commit to one specific idea, and this may be iterated throughout the design process. To iterate is to reflect on your work and refine and improve your design. You will sketch out your ideas into something that will address the Little Lemon customer's needs. You will then develop them into wireframes. A wireframe is a two-dimensional representation of the user interface, which is concerned with the placement and hierarchy of content, the functionalities that are offered, and the expected actions that users will take. Next comes the prototype, which is a simulation of the final product. You have iterated and refined your ideas into a fresh new solution, but you cannot assume it will work for everyone and release it just yet. You should simulate how it will behave first with a prototype. Take your wireframe and flesh it out. Give it some color, put in some buttons and text, and make it interactive. You can simulate a real scenario for your customers to help them achieve their required goals. Since UX is an iterative process based on user and client feedback, you may also have to iterate at this stage. So, your ideas are constantly being refined into something approaching a final design solution. Then, you will test your design. The testing stage is where you present your solution to users and get their feedback. You create a test script with some clear instructions focusing on achieving a task or tasks. Your test participants, customers in this case, interact with your prototype while trying to achieve the task at hand. Any frustrations can be communicated and highlighted at this stage, and you can go back and address them before the next stage of the process. The final stage is the build stage. You have listened to users, empathized with them, and aimed to solve their needs through iterative design techniques. You've watched them use your product and have tweaked it to make it easier and more intuitive. Now it's time to build. Ensuring you follow these steps can help ensure you are going to build a product that addresses the needs of your users and offers a great user experience. In this video, you recognized the key steps involved in the UX process and identified how you can apply them. You can use these tools to make the redesign of the Little Lemon website more user-friendly. You already covered UX principles that you can apply to the Little Lemon website as you improve its ordering and reservation functionalities. But you know that you also need to improve the user interface. So, you're excited to find out more about UI design. In this video, you will learn to explain the concepts of the UI component of UX/UI, identify applications of UI, and recognize the importance of successful UI design. To interface with something means interacting or communicating with it. You can interface with other humans and you can interface with computers and applications. People do it every day to communicate with colleagues and friends by email and text messages, or with technology, for example, a printer by changing its settings. and interfacing with a barista while they interact with a machine to make a coffee. Think about how you use your devices to achieve any number of tasks, like getting directions to places, taking online classes, or ordering food. A graphical user interface, or GUI, presents interactive visual components people can interact with on screen to communicate with technology. For consistency, we refer to it as a UI. The information and how it is laid out, the icons, colors, text, shapes, and information, that is all the UI. What happens when you tap or click something? That's the UI too. Interfaces are about communication, and since the dawn of time, humans have used tools as a means to communicate with each other. Cave drawings show us that people use sticks to illustrate stories and events. The stick became the quill, and the quill became the pen, which is still something used every day to convey messages and to communicate intent to others. Think of the modern keyboard, which is derived from the typewriter. Humans interacted with the typewriter by hitting keys with their fingers to assemble words. You do the same thing today when you are posting a status update on your favorite social network. Interfaces are also about tasks. Think about a car. The dashboard is a perfect example of a user interface. If the driver performs a task like pressing the gas pedal, the car responds and the speedometer reacts on the dashboard, and you also go faster. When you interact with your phone to check the Wi-Fi signal and the battery level, that is communication. The importance of a well-designed user interface cannot be overestimated. Think of the interface on a medical device that can communicate vitals to a doctor, or the controls of an airplane that can keep passengers safe in a storm. The intuitiveness of their designs can help save lives. Xerox PARC was the first PC with a graphical user interface. This UI was refined over the years, and the Xerox Star was launched in 1981 as a personal computer. The introduction and widespread application of many design metaphors such as the desktop, windows, menus, and icons were and are still in use today. These design metaphors helped users complete tasks by associating familiar mental models with this then new unfamiliar space. Another milestone was the introduction of smartphones and tablets, which utilized multi-touch screens facilitating the use of gestures to interact with them. Developers and designers were able to innovate and create applications to run on these devices. This phase in particular has brought on the current state of UI. It is ubiquitous. You can see it everywhere, from the apps you use to modern electric vehicle dashboards. In this course, you will focus on UI applied to the design of a website. However, the methods and concepts can apply to a range of outputs like applications. In this video, you learned about user interface design, its history and evolution, and the importance its role plays around us daily. Keeping the history and concepts in mind can help you create a better UI design for the Little Lemon website.
By now, you should have learned the principles of UX and UI design. You are on the right track to create a redesign for the ordering and reservation elements of the Little Lemon website. To get started on the redesign, you need to learn a standard industry design tool to create layouts and test them with users. So now is a good time to start learning Figma. In this video, you will explore how to navigate and use the Figma interface and recognize its sections. Figma is a free online UX/UI design prototyping tool. It is collaborative and assists designers and developers in building digital products. It allows them to edit, comment, and review designs and code together. It is web-based, so it works on all platforms like Macs, PCs running Windows, Linux, and Chromebook. In this course, you will cover the main stages of designing a website in Figma, from wireframes and mockups to an interactive prototype. You will explore the basic tools and get familiar with more advanced features like auto layout components and prototyping. To access Figma, go to www.figma.com and sign up for a free account. In Figma, you can build teams and create shared workspaces where you can work simultaneously on files. You can choose to start with a free starter or a paid professional plan. If you are a student or educator, you can access all of Figma's professional features for free. Just visit figma.com/education/apply to verify your education account. Now, let's explore Figma. After I log in, I am presented with the options New Design, New FigJam file, and Import file. I select New Design file. The interface displays the editor. It seems pretty blank the first time I open it, but don't worry about it. You will cover the sections in the Figma interface now. On top, there is a toolbar which contains a variety of tools and functions. In the center of the screen, there is the canvas where your design lives. Then there is the left sidebar with the layers, assets, and pages in your file. And then on the right, there is a right sidebar which contains 3 panels. But let's take it easy and cover each of the main sections in more detail now. Let's start with the canvas. The canvas is the background for all of your designs. It's where you'll create and evaluate your work. Now, the menu. Figma's menu can be accessed by clicking the Figma icon on the top left of the screen. Take a minute to explore the items in the menu. You can also search for a specific command by typing it in the Quick Action option. Now, let's briefly check the toolbar. In the toolbar, you can quickly access the tools you're likely to use most often, like frames, shapes, pan, and text. The toolbar is contextual, meaning that what appears in it depends on which item you have selected. Next is the Options section. It is located on the top center and displays extra options for whichever tool you have selected. If nothing is selected, Figma shows the file name. When something is selected, contextual options will appear. For example, if I have a shape selected, the options change to Edit Object, Group Components, or Mask. Now, let's explore layers. I access layers by clicking the Layers tab in the left sidebar. Every element that I add to my design appears in the Layers panel on the left, where they are listed and organized into frames and groups. Don't worry if you don't fully understand what layers, frames, and groups are. You will cover them in detail later in this course. Now, let's cover the right sidebar. It is a contextual section that can show either the design, prototype, or inspect panels. In this course, you will mainly focus on the design and prototype panels. The inspect panel can be used for copying CSS values. If I select an object on the frame, the panel shows the properties related to that specific object in the design panel. The panels in the right sidebar are contextual, meaning the information and settings change depending on which object is selected. It contains positional information, dimensions, fill stroke, and other effects. Now that you know how to sign up for Figma, navigate the user interface and recognize its sections. I encourage you to sign up and explore Figma's UI for yourself.
Now that you have the findings from user research, interviews, and observations, you can start working on the stages of the UX process. You may remember from studying them earlier that they are empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. By combining the information gathered from all users interviewed, you will learn how to develop a persona which will guide your decisions in the UX design process, beginning with the empathize stage. In this video, you will identify some of the tools available in user research and describe their role in the empathize stage of the UX process. A key tool in the empathize stage of the process is the user persona. The user persona is a fictional character profile that represents the main clientele of a company. It's a realistic model of the people you are seeking to assist. It guides designers away from making assumptions and encourages solutions grounded in empathy for this fictitious user. Although this user is fictitious, it is based on traits from user interviews and observations. Think of our persona as a mixture of the research participants. UX teams can create multiple personas to solve for. It depends on the size of the project and the results of the research data. In this case, 2 user personas were created, one for a typical returning customer and another for a new customer. Let's explore one of them. Her name is Tilly. She is 60 years old and loves food. She lives close to the Little Lemon restaurant. She loves their vegan penne carbonara. She likes the convenience of ordering food for delivery so she can enjoy it at home while watching her favorite TV shows and movies. She orders for delivery from her phone. Tilly likes things that work. She doesn't mind spending extra money on a product that she knows will work. She's on social media to keep in touch with friends and family, but still finds some websites and apps very frustrating to use. Let's check Tilly's persona. At the top, there is a photo, Tilly's name, age, gender, occupation, and technical ability. Next, there's a one-liner that describes what Tilly does. Loving aunt, great friend, bad gardener. On the right, there is a short bio too. Next, there is a core needs section and a frustration section, listing Tilly's goals and describing frustrations as the barriers that are stopping her from achieving those goals. This section reveals that she can get easily frustrated. It's worth noting that this is a light qualitative persona. There are different types, and you can read more about them in the additional resources, where you will also find a link to a persona template created in Figma. Next, you will explore an empathy map that has been created. Tilly is positioned in the center of the empathy map, which is divided into 4 quadrants, describing what she says, thinks, does, and feels. Empathy maps, which are neither chronological nor sequential, offer a glimpse into a user's character as a whole. The empathy map helps you get to know Tilly better and puts yourself in her shoes. You'll also find an empathy map template in the additional resources. Finally, a scenario is created for Tilly, which will help you solve her problems. Remember, you're empathizing with Tilly, not redesigning anything just yet. These tools helped create the following scenario. Persona, Tilly. Goal, eat her favorite meal. Want, order a vegan penne carbonara for delivery. Needs, access the site, select and customize her order. Resolution, input her details, pay for and track her order. In this video, you identified some of the tools designers can use in the empathy stage of the UX process. You also learned how to describe their role in the empathize stage of the UX process. Remember that it's important to center your thinking around the users and not yourself by not assuming things about your customers. This approach will help guide you as you improve the Little Lemon website.
I would say user research can be one of the more frustrating parts of the process if it means that you kind of have to change an idea or a product that you've developed, but it's also one of the most rewarding pieces of the process because you're seeing how your product actually impacts real people and it puts meaning to your work as well. And I'm a software engineer on the React Apps team at Meta. And me and my team work on building new features for Facebook.com. User research is a way of collecting quantitative feedback about how a product is fulfilling user needs and how understandable it is to an end user. Users are the people who are going to be interacting with our products every day, and we really need to make sure that we're fulfilling user needs, and the best way to do that is by conducting user research. We collect user research through A/B testing, through surveys, through observing users actually using the product, and by creating personas as well. There's a lot of different techniques for user research, and we actually have user researchers at Facebook who are conducting it nearly every day. User research is integral to the quality of products at Meta. We conduct user research as we're starting to think around the idea of a product, as we're building a product and releasing an MVP, and even after we've launched a product to make sure that it's still fulfilling user needs. We should collect user feedback early and often, just because we tend to pivot on the direction and the look and feel of our products based on user feedback. So I would say designers and PMs and user researchers tend to be involved in the user research process. User researchers are the ones actually conducting the research. They're the ones asking questions to users, conducting surveys, having the user actually use a product and writing down their feelings about it. Designers and PMs are more involved in the response to user research. They're collecting this user feedback and they're seeing what they need to change about a certain product. It's been really surprising to me how much user research can influence the direction of a product. I remember me and my team built out a new groups feature,
And we had just worked on the MVP, and we were giving it to a group of group admins to actually come and use the feature. And we actually ended up changing a lot of things about this new feature after we collected user feedback, even down to the name of the product. It had made sense to us, but it didn't really make sense to our end users. So we really had to take a look at the direction of this product. I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced as an engineer, hearing the results of user research, is kind of seeing how it defies your expectations as an engineer. It can be really difficult to change really big aspects of your product, especially features that you've already built out. So I think it's important to kind of conduct user research early and often, just so you're not dealing with the thrash of having to completely overhaul your product because it doesn't fit with the users like you thought it would. It can also be super rewarding though, because sometimes you show your product to users and you realize how much value an individual person gets out of your product. And it really puts your work in perspective too. So user research is a great way to hear how a feature that we build is actually impacting real people who are using it on a day-to-day basis. It's really cool to hear personal anecdotes about how a feature has positively impacted a group or community, and it really brings a human aspect to the work that I do every day. I think user research is a really important part of the design process. You should really think about the questions that you're asking and try not to bias user research toward what you think a product should look like. It's good to get open, honest answers from users because that will allow you to change and develop your product in a way that will actually fit user needs at the end of the day. And that way you haven't built and launched a product that no one's going to use or understand.
Congratulations! You completed this module on Introduction to UX and UI. In this module, you explored the basics of UX and UI and started studying about user-centered design. It's now time to recap the key points and concepts you learned and the skills that you gained. You began the module with a general introduction to the course. After you completed the first lesson, you are now able to differentiate between UX and UI and identify career options for the UX and UI disciplines. After you covered an introduction to UX and UI, you progressed to Lesson 2, where you focused on UX. In this lesson, you learned to define UX and identify the key stages in the UX process. Now, you are also able to discuss UX goals and identify the usability quality components. They are learnability, efficiency, memorability, error, and satisfaction. Still in Lesson 2, you covered an overview of the UX process where you recognized each of the stages: empathize, define, ideate, iterate, and test. After studying UX, you are ready to learn more about UI. In Lesson 3, you learned to explain the concepts of UI and describe its history. You also learned to identify applications of UI, recognize the importance of successful UI design, and explain different types of design, including interaction design, human-centered design, universal design, and design thinking. In addition, you got an introduction to Figma, the design tool you explore in this course. After an introduction to UX, UI, and Figma, you covered user-centered design. In this lesson, you used data from customer interviews and observations to better understand their issues while using the Little Lemon website. In this process, you explored a customer journey map and reviewed a persona in the empathy stage of the UX process. You now have an initial understanding of UX, UI, and user-centered design. You can explain the differences between UX and UI and recognize the importance of putting the customer in the forefront of your decisions as you work on your redesign. That's a great start to your UX and UI journey. Well done. Now that you appreciate the issues users have with the Little Lemon website, let's explore principles proposed by highly regarded designers. You can use these principles to evaluate the current Little Lemon website and use them as you create your own designs. In the next couple of minutes, you will learn to describe popular evaluation methodologies in UX and UI design, as well as explore how these evaluation methodologies can be applied to improve your designs. Design, like food, is subjective. What might be beautiful for someone may not suit others' tastes. But just like food, there are some rules we can follow to ensure enjoyable experiences for customers. If you are mindful of these rules at the point of ideation, that means before designing, you can save yourself a lot of time. Serving customers fresh food with clean utensils and providing users with visually engaging and usable product designs are not entirely all that different. Another thing to consider is the beauty of functionality. Consider a sign-up form. Sure, it's not the most beautiful looking design, but it can function beautifully. Not everything that is beautiful is functional. On the other hand, not everything that works well looks beautiful. Functionality should always be prioritized over aesthetics. Now try and consider something that's easy to use that also looks great. Easier said than done, right? But there are some evaluation methods that will help. It's important to know that although the guidelines you're about to cover are invaluable, you don't have to apply them in a very detailed way. Instead, use these broad recommendations as aids to spot bad habits before they happen and think about more usable alternatives that satisfy these guidelines. More importantly, being mindful of these points early on saves time, money, and helps you to create more usable solutions in the long run. So, let's begin by discussing design evaluation methods, where it all started and whose methods influenced the world of UX/UI. Dieter Rams was a German industrial designer, an academic, and very influential in the world of UX/UI. His designs have a long-lasting appeal and are still valued and influence designers today. He wrote the 10 Good Design Principles, which serves as a good evaluation methodology for all designers. Another important methodology is Jakob Nielsen's 10 Usability Heuristics for User Interface Design. All of these are specifically relevant to human-computer interaction, also called HCI, and this methodology has some overlap with Ram's principles. The final method of design is the American computer scientist Ben Schneiderman's 8 Golden Rules of Interface Design, and it is named the Schneiderman Evaluation. Again, there is some overlap with the other methodologies, so make sure to explore the evaluation cheat sheets provided as readings to guide what you may consider as problematic. Make sure to evaluate the form flow against these principles and try to prioritize the biggest offenders. You should now be able to evaluate various designs using the principles of good design. In this lesson, you learned about popular evaluation methodologies and how these evaluation methodologies can be applied to improve your designs. Remember, if you are mindful of these aspects at the point of ideation, that means before designing, you can save yourself a lot of time. Good job.
Over 100 million people who use our apps use different font sizes and screen zoom, and around another 250K use screen readers. So it's really important that we're giving those people the same valuable experience on Facebook.com that we're giving to everyone else who uses our sites too. My name is Katie, and I'm a software engineer on the React Apps team at Meta. And me and my team work on building new features for Facebook.com. I hope in this video you learn the importance of accessibility and different strategies that you can use when you're building a product and when you're launching it to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. So there are a few aims that we have when creating an accessible product here at Meta. We want our product to be able to work with a screen reader so that non-sighted people can use Facebook.com the same way that everyone else does. We also want to make sure that there are adjustable font sizes for people who might not be able to read small fonts. We want to make sure that there's a variety of keyboard shortcuts available to those who are using our apps as well. Accessibility might not be the first thing you think of when you go to Facebook.com, but it's certainly top of mind for the engineers and teams here at Meta. It's something that I, as an engineer, try to test with every change that I make, and it's something that's built into our core UI components as well. When I'm testing accessibility, I'm making sure that I'm able to tab through my feature using my keyboard. I'm making sure that keyboard shortcuts are set up properly. The screen reader is able to properly identify all parts of the page. And then there are other site-wide things that we have, like variable font sizes that are sort of just given for free when I'm building a new feature. As an engineer, I'm testing my individual changes, but there are a few built-in solutions for making sure that products are accessible across the board. For example, when an engineer adds a new button, if it's not accessible via a screen reader, a red overlay will actually appear on the button. That'll flag to the engineer that they're missing an ARIA label or some other accessible component in that button. So it's really easy for engineers to spot when they're missing something related to accessibility. After a product is built and launched too, we work with accessibility specialists to make sure that our product is meeting the standards for accessibility too. We rewrote Facebook.com a couple years ago, and we had to really think about how are we going to make this site accessible for the percentage of people who need to use screen readers and different font sizes. One example of how we made Facebook.com accessible is we actually made different font sizes default throughout the entire site. It's difficult to ask every product team and every engineer to account for different font sizes when they're building their products. So luckily, a lot of our engineers use the same core components, and we actually use a style transform so that we can globally change the size of fonts across our site. So now when users want to specify that they want a larger or a smaller font, it's applied everywhere automatically, and engineers don't really need to think about it when they're building their products. I would say that if you've never used a screen reader before or keyboard shortcuts, definitely do your research and look into them. According to the World Health Organization, I think around 15% of people have a disability of some form, and it's really important that you're giving those people the same quality experience that you're giving all of your other users. So it's definitely super important, and you want everyone to engage with your product. So this is a really important step that you can take to ensure that.
You previously learned about good design principles. They are usually combined with best practices as you create your own designs. And this also includes very simple elements such as a form, which can be frustrating if not designed with the user experience in mind. To illustrate the importance of good form design, you will cover an example of a login form for the Little Lemon website. In this video, you will learn more about the importance of designing good forms and implement best practices to improve form design and usability. Okay, you might be thinking, form design, really? Isn't that super obvious? Not to everybody. The simple fact is that analyzing interactive forms in the context of usability and user goals helps you to create logical and user-centered solutions that all users are familiar with. Understanding the best practice recommendations of the simple elements that are available to developers and designers helps you to establish a way of thinking. Sure, the behaviors of simple forms and complex interactive components may be very different, but it's the way you think about designing and assembling them that is important. These fundamental rules are always the same. What is really helpful is to check for best practices and apply them wherever you can. Later on, you will find additional resources and a form design best practice guide that will help you with a more comprehensive breakdown of these best practices. Now, let's suppose that you've taken some of the comments and feedback on board from your previous interviews and observations. Based on the feedback you received from the users, you decide to redesign your form in HTML to test. You then ask your colleague Enzo, a more experienced UX/UI designer, if he would be prepared to voice his thoughts about the simple prototype you created in HTML. He agrees to this and signs the consent form. You have tried to improve the food ordering form. Now let's explore some of Enzo's comments and some best practice solutions that may help you improve your form. Enzo does not seem to understand what some of the questions on your form are referring to. He also mentions that the inputs are very close together, and he suggests that you space the user input fields such as text fields, password fields, checkboxes, and radio buttons. By spacing these input fields more consistently, the user can see that each field is unique and identify the labels that refer to the input. You can also implement logical grouping to make the form more understandable. The payment is separated from the address, and each row is given a subtle contrast color to differentiate. Enzo also comments that he is confused in the middle of the flow. He can't get back, and that there's no visibility of system status. He states that he has no idea whether he is close to completing the form or not. Enzo suggests that by implementing a clear path to completion with a progress indicator, users will see where they are in the flow. This means that they can even go back to review the content they entered. Only after entering all his information was Enzo informed that he had made an error, and he indicated that he did not know where he made the error on the form or what type of error it was. Enzo suggests that your form inputs should be validated during the flow of the form. This ensures that the current content that the user inserts is validated at the time of input. He also reminds you that the language should be clear and specific to whatever section of the form the user is currently in. As a UX UI designer, you are aware that security is of the utmost importance. Nowadays, most websites require that a password consists of a mix of lowercase and capital letters, symbols, and numbers. Enzo remarked that when compiling your forms, you assumed that users were aware of this and provided no guidance for them to compile their passwords. By not clearly stating the exact requirements, users were not aware of the problem. He suggests that you provide clear instructions with a strength indicator, giving the user immediate feedback on their choice. By asking Enzo to provide feedback on your form, you have gained valuable insight to help you make the form more accessible and easier to understand. You should now be more familiar with form design and how to use feedback to enhance your form on the Little Lemon website. In this lesson, you learned about the importance of designing clearly defined forms and implemented best practices to improve form design and usability by using a clear layout with distinguished fields and sections. And finally, by aligning your client's business goals with the user's goals to help you get closer to a successful product design. Great job! As the UX UI designer for the Little Lemon restaurant website, you hear about the current component-driven nature of product design. So you want to learn more about how it can help you improve some of the website components. In the next couple of minutes, you will learn to describe component-driven products and design systems and explain how their application can create captivating user interfaces. Now, you may wonder what a component is in UI design. In simple terms, a component is any part of your design that can be logically grouped, which is thought of as standalone and can be reused. Let's explore how you build a component. First, you start small and build one component at a time. Then you combine components to create a more complex component. And finally, you build interfaces using these individual and combined components. Let's explore a practical example. Your website probably has a header on each page. Therefore, rather than creating the header from scratch for every page, you could simply construct a header component and reuse it. This header component may contain other components, for example, a button component, a search bar component, and a navigation bar component that are their own standalone elements. They are used in the header, but they could just as well be reused elsewhere on the site. Think of interchangeable blocks that you can assemble and reassemble to construct user interfaces. The advantage of assembling the user interface this way is that design and development work can be replicated quickly. You can create alternative components for alternative actions. This will also benefit the users. If assembled well, these consistent components will be aesthetically pleasing, easily learnable, and memorable. Now, let's explore what a design system is. A design system is a set of reusable pre-made design components and patterns that can be used to design products at scale. Similar to a brand style guide, they contain rules and best practice behaviors for design components. Larger companies can have very detailed design systems, but more about that later. There is no set list of items that must be included in a design system. However, the most successful design systems frequently have the following features: design guidelines, a design pattern library, a UI kit or component library, and finally, process design guidelines. Let's explore what these are in more detail. First and foremost are design guidelines. These will vary from business to business and most likely reflect the underlying values of the brand. So, a design pattern library is a collection of accepted and widely used design patterns or a central repository. And according to the Interaction Design Foundation, a pattern is the recurrence of multiple design elements that collaborate with one another. Note that these elements can be shapes, lines, and colors. A UI kit, also called a component library or a collection of UI-focused components, consists of buttons, widgets, and more. With the aid of these resources, teams can quickly produce UI-friendly designs. And lastly, the Process Design Guidelines is a collection of accepted and widely used patterns, such as a design pattern library. This assists designers in interpreting design principles while they carry out a task. In this lesson, you learned about components and libraries that you can use to design user interfaces. You also learned about the modular elements that combine to inform a user interface. Finally, you explored design systems and considered their role in product design. Good work! By evaluating the current Little Lemon online ordering functionality, you can identify issues which offer opportunity for improvement. You keep Tilly, the persona developed in a previous lesson, in mind during your evaluation. Say out loud, what would Tilly think when using this? You should become your persona. Feel free to populate some artifacts like empathy maps and journey maps for your persona when evaluating this design. In this video, you will evaluate the user interface of the Little Lemon website. And you will also use evaluation methods and interface guidelines, such as the good design principles, heuristic evaluation, and interface guidelines to redesign some of Little Lemon's website features. Tilly is a regular customer of the Little Lemon restaurant. She is hungry, and as she loves to eat from the comfort of her own home while watching her favorite shows and movies, she decides to order some food for delivery. So she opens the Little Lemon website on her mobile device. She taps the Order Online button. Tilly is immediately confused. The content is difficult to read. She lands on the Reserve a Table page. But she wants to order some food, not reserve a table. Where is the menu? She can't find it. All she can see is this week's specials menu and a Greek salad. She wonders if she has done something wrong, but how can she go back? She doesn't realize that the word menu is tappable, nor the Greek salad. There is no indication of that. There is a go button. How is she supposed to know what go means? Are there no other meals, she wonders? She decides to tap the word go as it looks like it might take her somewhere. Tilly thinks, oh, there are only 2 menu items, a Greek salad and a bruschetta. She thinks, what do I like? Why are testimonials here? Tilly doesn't know what to tap or click to order some food. The 2 actions she observes are confusing. She sees 2 buttons. She asks herself, do I tap go or add? And if I tap go, will I have more food options as in the previous screen? Or if I tap add, will I add a Greek salad or a bruschetta to my order? Tilly also wants to know where the basket is. Tilly thinks there seems to be a mix of information on the screen. She also feels that there are inconsistent button labels, actions, and designs. And she wants to know why there is no add button on the bruschetta. What does your persona think of this design? Now let's evaluate it by using Ram's 10 Principles of Good Design, Nielsen's Heuristics, and Schneiderman's 8 Golden Rules. Remember that you covered these evaluation methodologies earlier. Tilly states that the text is difficult to read in some parts. This is not very aesthetically pleasing, nor is it understandable or thorough. It seems ill-conceived. And she wants to know why there is a button to reserve a table. These issues violate Ram's Principles 3, 4, and 8. Number 3 states that good design is aesthetic, and number 4 says that good design makes a product understandable. Finally, number 8 affirms that good design is thorough down to the last detail. Nielsen's heuristic principle, number 8, has also been violated, which states that interfaces should not contain information that is irrelevant or rarely needed, as in reserve a table in this case. Let's explore some more issues that Tilly raised on the Little Lemon website and if these issues violate any principles. Remember Tilly's comments that the word menu looks like part of a sentence? And that it doesn't give any indication that it or the Greek salad is tappable? She also commented that the go button doesn't seem like a button or part of the Greek salad section, and that the bruschetta text to the right is mostly hidden and there is no navigation or basket. These issues violate Ram's Principles 2, 3, 4, and 8. Number 2 requires that good design makes a product useful, and number 3 states that good design is aesthetic. Number 4 says that good design makes a product understandable. And finally, number 8 states that good design is thorough down to the last detail. These issues also violate Nielsen's heuristics number 1, 4, 6, and 8, which are number 1, the visibility of system status where the design should always keep users informed about what is going on, and number 4 that states consistency and standards where users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. Number 6 states recognition rather than recall, where you minimize the user's memory load by making elements, actions, and options visible. And lastly, number 8 requires aesthetic and minimalist design. Not only were Ram's and Nielsen's principles violated, but also Schneiderman's golden rules of interfaces number 1, 7, and 8. Let's explore these in more detail. Number 1 is strive for consistency. And number 7 states that the design should support the internal locus of control that allows the users to be the initiators of actions. Number 8 requires that the design should reduce the user's short-term memory load. Having identified these best practice violations, consider the redesign of these 2 screens and maybe consider asking yourself, what would Tilly want? Now that you evaluated the Little Lemon website, you know the issues that violate important design principles. This should help you create a better design that will make customers much happier. In this lesson, you evaluated the Little Lemon website, taking Tilly, your user persona, into consideration. And you also used evaluation methods such as the good design principles, heuristic evaluation, and interface guidelines to identify UI flaws. Great job. Now that you've identified the navigation issues with the Little Lemon website, let's explore best practices you can use in the redesign. You are beginning to feel confident about your design work, and each time you iterate and test, you get valuable feedback. And even though it's repetitive, it's helping Adrian achieve his business and user goals. You're also starting to feel that you're improving each time you iterate. Some of Tilly's feedback, like, "I have no idea where I am," got you thinking that this has to do with content and how it is organized. You really want to solve this. Let's get into it. In this video, you'll learn how best to consider your content and structure with usability in mind. You'll also learn navigation best practices regarding information architecture and content strategy. You already learned that you must keep an open dialogue with your users. In the field of UX design, there are several ways to achieve this. There are 2 broad methods you can consider to make your users feel comfortable and know where they are at all times. The first one is content strategy, and the second one is information architecture. It's worth noting that these methodologies are deep and rich. And in this course, you will cover an introduction and apply some of the key principles. But you should explore the information in the additional resources readings to gain a greater understanding of these concepts. Content strategy involves presenting the content on your website in a meaningful way that will promote your products. And it helps to align your client's business and UX goals. It also assists in aligning your content around your personas and scenarios. A broad rule of thumb is to think about structuring your content under the headings of prioritization, which is how you determine your content and its relevance to your users. Next is organization. This is the framework for grouping, labeling, and other related content so that users can find what matters to them. Then, presentation is how pieces of content are assembled to form what a user sees. The final one is specifications, which is the content requirements for each content piece. Information architecture can be used to find out what you need to know to design good navigation. The information for larger websites may need to be structured and indexed in a certain way to support good navigation. But in this case, a simple card sorting task will help you. In a card sorting exercise, you write all of the individual elements that you want to include on the site on post-it notes. You then ask your potential users to order them into logical groups that make sense to them and group results. This can be done on a table or a wall to group cards within sections like menu and about. The website navigation can be organized into 5 sections: home, about, menu, reservations, and order online. Home is an introductory summary of the site, whereas about has some information about their produce, ingredients, the brother's, grandmother's story, and a link to social channels. Menu has an up-to-date printable breakdown of a traditional restaurant menu. Reservations is for table reservations. And order online is for ordering for delivery. This navigation bar is known as a primary navigation and will sit on top of all pages. A hierarchy in the order of elements, such as the navigation bar, helps to create meaning and a sense of place in your product. The navigation bar elements have a strong influence on the sense of place, and this will be present on all pages to reinforce the site structure. Your navigation is at the top of the Little Lemon website page, which is a familiar model. The navigation has room to breathe, and it isn't clouded with other information or graphics. The colors should be contrasting so that the links stand out. Your page's navigation now looks like it can be used to navigate to other pages on the website. And the links are not hidden. They look like links. If the user is on a certain page, that link will look active with a heavier weight or different color and an underline. The logo will act as a link to the homepage. A footer at the bottom of the page will also contain links to all individual pages and social channels. On the mobile version, due to lack of space, you decide to use a hamburger menu. When it is clicked or tapped, it opens a side menu which displays links to the other pages on the site. Thanks to your comprehensive evaluation and redesign of the Little Lemon website, you are helping Adrian achieve his business and user goals. In this video, you are introduced to information architecture, content strategy, and website navigation and their role in product design. Good work. Congratulations! You've reached the end of the second module in this course. Let's take a moment to recap on some of the key skills you've gained. First, you learned how to evaluate interactive design in UX, UI, and should now be able to name and explain evaluation methods in UX and UI design, including Rams, Schneidermans, and Nielsen's. Then, you learned how to identify the best practice principles in design. Now that you've completed that content, you're able to explain the importance of good form design, implement best practices to improve form design, describe component-driven products and design systems, and explain how component-driven products and design systems deliver captivated audiences. You then moved on to learn how to evaluate the Little Lemon website. Having completed that part, you're now able to evaluate the Little Lemon website, use evaluation methods and interface guidelines to redesign the Little Lemon website, evaluate your content and structure with usability in mind, and name and explain navigation best practices regarding information architecture and content strategy. To this point, you should now be able to evaluate UX UI designs, apply best practice UX UI principles, describe component-driven products and design systems, and evaluate a website based on the best practice UX UI design principles. Great job! You have made great progress learning about UX and UI. You also had a brief introduction to Figma. Now it's time to expand your knowledge, which will help you improve the Little Lemon website. In this video, you will explore how to use the Layers panel, how to drag and organize layers, and how to construct shapes. You will also identify how to duplicate, scale, group, and align elements. First, let's cover a few concepts in Figma. They are frames, layers, and groups. Let's start with frame. In other design tools, this may be referred to as an artboard. Think of it as a container where your design lives. Now, let's define what a layer is. A layer is an object within a frame. As you add an object to a frame, a new layer will be created. The next concept to cover is a group. In a group, multiple objects can be combined, and once combined, a single top layer is created, which contains all the objects. Frames and groups appear very similar. They both help organize your file by nesting layers or grouping layers together. However, frames supply a lot more functionality like independent sizing. You will cover this in more detail throughout the course. Now let's explore these concepts in practice with Figma. A frame is a container for elements. Think of it as a screen on an app. For example, screen 1 is the first screen you see, and screen 2 is the second. If you add another frame, that would be the third, and so on. To create a frame, you click the frame's icon up on the top toolbar. You then click and drag out a frame. Another way of making a frame is to select the frame icon. Go over to the right-hand panel where Figma has created lots of frame presets. In this instance, I will use a desktop frame. To navigate around your frame or canvas, go up to Zoom menu in the upper right of the screen. It will tell you the current zoom level and has some useful reminders for shortcuts related to zooming, such as Command or Control plus to zoom in or Command or Control minus to zoom out. To pan across your screen, you select the hand icon on the toolbar, or you can use Shift on your keyboard. Now, let's draw some shapes. I select the frame and go to the Basic Shapes Tools menu in the toolbar. I click the arrow next to the circle icon to open the Shape Tools and select a rectangle. I click and drag out a rectangle. If I want a square, I select the rectangle icon and hold Shift on my keyboard to create a square. It's the same process to create a circle. I selected the ellipse and hold the Shift key. To duplicate the rectangle, I select it and I press Ctrl or Command D on the keyboard. The rectangle has been duplicated and can be placed wherever I wish. Let's look at the properties of these shapes. I select the square. Over on the right-hand side, I can see its X and Y coordinates and the width, height, rotation, and corner radius. Let's just change the radius to 100. As you may have noticed, every shape by default has a grey fill and no outline. To change this, I go to the Fill section and click the little rectangle that opens the color palette. Using the circular icon, I click to select a color I like. If I want a different hue, I drag this slider across. I can also change the transparency or type in a color reference number. Here, I can also apply an outline, which is called a stroke, and choose where I want it: inside, outside, or center. In this case, I choose the outside option. On the right-hand side, there are advanced stroke settings where I can change its line type. I can also add an effect. I click the plus icon and add a drop shadow. In the Layers panel on the left-hand side of the screen, I can see my shapes as layers in the order they have been drawn. I move the circle shape on top of the square, but decide I want the square on top of the circle. All I need to do is drag and drop the squares layer on top of the circle layer. Now, it's important here that you keep the layers named correctly, so I rename Rectangle 2 to Square and Ellipse 1 to Circle. There are also other features within the Layers panel. I can switch layers on and off as well as lock layers, which just means it cannot be moved. We've got the rounded square and the circle that are two independent elements that work separately. But if I want to make them move and act as one object, I select them and I right-click and we choose Group Selection or Ctrl-G or Command-G on your keyboard. This allows these elements to move as one. If you want to alter one of the shapes, just double-click inside the shape. Now that you have explored the fundamentals of frames, layers, and basic shapes, why don't you just play around and create your own elements? In this video, you learn the basics of Figma frames, layers, and shapes. I encourage you to practice using these basic tools yourself and note the differences in the Layers panel between groups and frames.
In interface design, fonts play a very important role. The font you choose will determine the readability and the appeal of your text. The color, size, spacing, and width of text all deliver a message of your product to the users. In this video, you will cover the basics of using the text and fonts tools. To get started, let's explore the text properties in the design panel on the right sidebar. There are two ways to create a text element. To begin typing, I click the T icon in the toolbar on the top. I can also use the T keyboard shortcut. Then I can start typing. This creates a text box with an auto resize feature, which allows the width of the text box to grow horizontally along with the text. I can also click and drag to create a fixed text box with specific dimensions. Since the text box size has been established, the auto resize is fixed. This allows longer strings of text to move to the next line once they reach the edge of the fixed text box. To edit an existing text element, I double-click inside the text box. To allow the text box to auto resize, I go to the design panel in the right sidebar and change the auto resize value to height. Now, when I add new text, the bounding box will enlarge vertically, but not horizontally. When I use this setting, I ensure the height of the text box is sized based on the line height specified in the font style. A text box that is sized too small for its contents will automatically resize to the height to fit. When creating text in Figma, 3 resizing modes can be applied. Grow horizontally, which is the default when you click once to make a new text box. Fixed, the default when you click and drag to make a new text box. And grow vertically. To customize text in Figma, I can use the drop-down in the design panel in the right sidebar. I can then select a new font. I can also type in the field to search for a specific font. I search for the Oswald font. To further customize text, I can select from the drop-down menu to choose the style or use shortcut keys, such as Control-B on Windows or Command-B on a Mac for bold, Control or Command-I for italics, Control or Command-U to underline. I can change the font size by typing it in or selecting the new field and pressing the arrows up or down. I can also change the amount of space between each line of text. The default is auto. Let's increase this to 43. To the right of this property is the character spacing option. It adjusts the spacing or kerning of a certain character combination. By default, Figma uses percentage values. However, if I type in a pixel value, it will change the unit to pixel. For example, let's change the spacing to 4 pixels. Now, let's explore text alignment. Horizontal alignment defines how text is distributed within its bounding box, left, right, and center. On the other hand, vertical alignment determines how the text is distributed vertically, top, bottom, and middle. When I go to the 3 dots at the bottom of the text options section, it brings up 3 additional tabs. In the Basics tab, you can choose how you want your text to resize horizontally, adjust the horizontal alignment of the text, apply decoration to text like strike through and underline, change the spacing between paragraphs of text, offset the first line of text with a paragraph indentation, create numbered or bulleted lists, or change the text case. In the Details tab, you can apply settings such as style, position such as superscript, subscript, and fractions. You can also access any open type features like letter forms, character variants, and horizontal spacing. Finally, in the Variables tab, you can adjust a font's variable axes setting. There are other attributes not within the Text Properties panel which can be used to modify text, such as changing the color of the text, adding a stroke, or adding an effect. Let's make this text green by changing its fill. Now, let's add a green 1-point stroke to this text layer. Then, add a drop shadow to this text layer by adding an effect. Alright, I've applied a couple of effects to the text. In this video, you've covered some text and font tools that are available in Figma. I encourage you to take some time to practice using them.
Everyone wants a mobile version of their website, one designed for all screen resolutions. For example, on a phone, the user would see content shown in a single column view. A tablet might show the same content in 2 columns. This is where responsive design comes into play. Responsive design is an approach to web page creation that makes use of flexible layouts, which removes the need to design layouts to suit every device. In this lesson, you will learn how to create a responsive grid system for desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. A web page or app is built of squares and rectangles which are contained within a grid system or a structure of invisible lines and columns. They organize the content on the page and create alignment and order. They form the basic structure of the user interface. Let's see how we can design in Figma with responsive web design in mind. Let's start by creating responsive grids. To get started, I select the frame icon on the toolbar on top and press F on my keyboard, which brings up the Frames panel. Then I select the desktop frame 1440 by 1024. On the right sidebar, there is a section called Layout Grid. There is a plus icon on the right. When I click it, by default, a simple 10 pixel by 10 pixel grid will appear. If I click on the 9 dots below, a pop-up will appear which gives options to adjust the size and color of the grid. They are static and pixel fixed, which means that if the frame is adjusted, the grid stays intact. There is a drop-down menu offering 3 different types of grid. I will start with the column grid. The column grid helps to order content horizontally. When it is selected, the grid inside the frame changes to the default 5-column grid with the gutters, the pieces in between. The most common number of columns are 12 on desktop, 8 on a tablet, and 4 on a mobile. The common gutter size is 20 pixels. So let's change the grid to a 12-column grid. I keep the type to stretch, which means the width of the column will automatically grow or shrink when I resize the frame. To keep the grid responsive, I changed the margin to 70. This is the space between the content and the left and right sides of the screen, and I keep the gutter at 20. Now let me add some order vertically. Here I bring in the 8-point grid, as most of the popular screen sizes are divisible by 8, and it's a base for space and consistency. So I select the frame and head over to the right sidebar and click the plus in the Layout Grid section to overlay another layout. In the dialog box, I change the grid layout to a row and change the count, or the number of rows, to 1000. Then I change the type to top and the height to 8. Finally, I set the gutter to 0. Now we have a vertical and horizontal grid. So let's add content blocks. You will notice now that everything snaps to the grid. This makes things simpler to arrange and makes all measurements consistent. And everything is divisible by 8. If I want to view the frame without the grid system, I click on the zoom percentage in the top right corner of the screen. This will open the View Settings menu. Then I can find an option to turn grids on or off. Alternatively, I can use the keyboard shortcuts to toggle layout grids off. On a Mac, it's Ctrl-G, and Windows, it's Ctrl-Shift-4. By using the same command, the grid will be displayed. Constraints are another benefit of using a grid. I select the content boxes in the desktop version and give them constraints. Constraints are used to fix content on a layout to the left, right, top, bottom, and center of a grid. Here I apply left and right constraints, and now if we alter the frame size, the contents act responsively and change size also. In this video, you covered how to create a responsive grid system and learned how to constrain the elements within the grid.
You already know that Figma offers some basic shapes, but sometimes you will need shapes that aren't available. So it's important to know how to create new shapes from the ones available by combining and manipulating them. In this video, you will learn how to combine elements to create new ones, how to align them with precision, and how to scale them. Let's start with combining elements. I have a number of shapes on my screen. I want to select 3 of them, so I click and drag around them. Now I go to the toolbar on the top center and I click the 2 squares. The dropdown shows several options. The union option combines the selected shapes into one. The subtract option removes objects from the selection. The intersect option shows where the objects selected intersect. Finally, the exclude option excludes areas where shapes intersect. Now, let's explore how to align and distribute objects. Designers know that it's important for their products to look good, and part of that is achieved with proper alignment of objects. To align objects, I select all the objects I want, and then I go to the design panel in the right sidebar. The alignment tools are on the top. There are various options in this panel. The first 6 are for aligning elements in relation to one another. They are Align Left, Align Horizontal Centers, Align Right, Align Top, Align Vertical Centers, and Align Bottom. Finally, the last options, Distribute Elements. So I can select the objects and distribute them vertically or horizontally. In addition, it's important to make sure that the sizes of objects correspond to the intended design. So let's cover how to do that with normal scaling. Scaling an object means to resize it. To scale an object, I select it and drag its corner. Now, let me select multiple objects to check what happens. When I resize a group, its child elements will scale. However, effects, strokes, and text sizes will not scale. Notice how the text in the element doesn't scale, nor will effects or strokes. If I also want to scale these properties, I can use the Scale tool located at the top left corner of the screen. I select the group, click on the Scale tool, and drag it using the scale controls. The scaling tool helps make sure the element or the elements of the frame are consistent. In this video, you learned how to combine elements to create new ones, align them with precision, and scale them. As a designer, you will work with images pretty much every day. So you need to know the correct methods of inserting and adjusting images, which will help you create beautiful designs. So let's explore images in Figma. In this video, you will cover how to insert images and how to mask elements to show specific parts of an image and hide the rest. There are several ways to insert an image. I can use the Place Image function, change the fill properties, or drag and drop an image. First, let's cover how to use the Place Image function. I go over to the Figma icon on the top left-hand side and scroll down to Place Image, or I can use the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-K on a Mac or Control-Shift and K on Windows. Now I select an image to upload. Figma will then display a crosshair mouse pointer. I click and drag within the frame to place the image. I make it 1 column wide and square. I adjust this in the design panel after adding the image, and I set the image to be 112 pixels wide and 112 pixels high, which is the size of the box. Then I align the image with the box. Second, I can insert an image by filling an object with the image I want. I select an object, then I go to the Fill section in the Design panel on the right sidebar and click the gray solid color. There is a drop-down menu, and I select Image. A checkerboard pattern appears with my shape with a prompt to choose an image to upload. Several image or photo-specific options to alter the image, such as exposure and contrast, are displayed. There are also options in the drop-down menu to change how the image is displayed. The default is set to Fill. I can also change it to Fit. Fit allows me to show the full image in my shape, but it may cause blank space around the image. I can also crop the image that I insert. The crop option allows me to crop the image to the size that I want. Another option to fill an object with an image is to use the tile option, which allows me to create a pattern. Finally, the last way to add an image is to drag and drop the image onto Figma. One other effect I can apply to images is masking, where I hide some parts of an image and reveal others. Sometimes I want just one part of an image, and I want it in a specific shape that is different from the shape of the original image. Masking helps me achieve that. To mask an image, all I need is the image I want to mask on and the shape I want to mask by. Let's explore how to do that. I start by drawing a circle. I make sure that the image is on top of the shape. I can do this in the Layers panel. Then I select both the shape and image and click the Use as Mask button in the options on the top center of the screen. Now all I have to do is reshape the picture to fit into the circle. A mask group will appear in the Layers panel on the left, which I can rename. I can do this for any kind of shape. Now you know how to insert images and how to mask elements. I encourage you to try practicing these newly learned skills.
The Little Lemon restaurant has faced difficulties with the Order Online feature on their website. The restaurant's menu is too long, requiring endless scrolling. There are no options to order a specific number of dishes. The user has to repeatedly select a dish and add it to the basket. How can this be improved? You already learned how to create grids, draw shapes, and manipulate objects in Figma. In this video, you will learn to describe the concepts of wireframing and design wireframes using Figma. The purpose of a wireframe is to create a basic structure for each screen in the design before things like branding, colors, and images are considered. It provides a way of communicating ideas quickly, which can be refined later. You focus on the user experience and on what they need to accomplish a task. I will use Figma to draw the wireframes so they can be shared with other team members, giving them the opportunity to make comments in the same document. I will create 3 wireframes in this exercise. First, let's list Adrian's requirements. They will become content blocks, which will give me a nice skeleton of what content will appear in the wireframe. It will show the Little Lemon brand, about and menu categories, prices, and a customized orders section. It will also show description and photos of dishes, delivery or takeout options, the number of dishes in each order, and an Add to Order button. Finally, it will show a login and a pay section, and of course a navigation bar. Now I have a good idea of what I need to put on my wireframes. I will begin with the mobile version first. In UX, this is a common practice. It's called mobile first design. This is because most users on the web nowadays access websites on their mobile device. So I want to make sure that my design works perfectly on a mobile device. In addition, it's easier to solve design problems on a small screen and then adapt them to a large one. On the first frame, I need the content blocks to contain the navigation bar, About Little Lemon and menu categories, and menu dishes. So I select a mobile frame and add a 4-column layout grid to the frame. Then I construct content blocks using rectangles for each block. Next, I move these blocks out of the frame. Then I make the rectangles narrower, but I do not change the text. It gives me a rough outline of all the content in the wireframe, to use as a reference as I am designing within the frame. Now let's focus on the navigation bar. I need to offer users a way to navigate to the home screen. So I add a logo that will take me back to the home screen. I also include a shopping basket as it's an online delivery service. I chose to use a hamburger menu. When tapped, it opens up a pop-up overlay so the user can easily navigate to other pages on the site. For the logo, I draw a rectangle and diagonal lines through it. This is a conventional way to denote an image placeholder. When the basket is tapped, it opens up a pop-up overlay which allows users to track and alter what they intend to purchase and an option to check out. In the About Little Lemon content block, I want to include the Little Lemon name, what city it is in, a brief description of what type of food it offers, a photograph. Adrian wants users to have an option to book a table online, so I put it in this content block as a button. When clicked, the user is brought to another page. Now, let's work on the menu categories. I know they have not been decided yet. However, I represent them as buttons, naming them Cat 1, Cat 2, and so on. Now I want to add some dishes from the menu. I add them on the bottom. As this is the first screen of the online page, Adrian wants to highlight this week's specials. I need a title, the name of dish, a description, the price, and an image. This section is scrollable vertically to see further items. I need to note that when a dish is clicked, the user is taken to another screen. I repeat this process for all screens in the Order Online section. In the wireframe, no color font images are included. It is just the blueprint. All that is important here is the layout and functionality. In this video, you explored the concepts of wireframing and how to design wireframes using Figma. You're encouraged to practice it and perhaps wireframe the desktop version of the Little Lemon website. Now that you explored wireframing to improve the food ordering element of the Little Lemon website, it's time to cover how you can test your design for usability. In this video, you will learn to define usability testing, identify the players involved, and describe the different types of usability testing. Usability testing is the process of getting actual people to use a website, app, or other product you've designed while tracking their actions and reactions. Usability testing is crucial to ensure you create an effective, efficient, and delightful experience for your users. Users are given tasks to perform while being observed by a researcher to see where they run into difficulties or become confused. If many people run into the same issues, recommendations can be made to fix these usability issues. It offers opportunities to make improvements. There are many types of usability testing, but the facilitator, the participant, and the tasks given are the leading players in most of them. Let's cover them now. The facilitator gives the participants tasks. They monitor the participants' behavior and listen to feedback as they complete these tasks. The facilitator may also ask follow-up questions to get further information from the participant. The participant is a user of the product you have designed or a similar product. Practical actions that the participant might carry out in everyday life are used as the tasks in a usability test. Depending on the study objectives and the usability testing, they may be highly detailed or vague. When conducting usability testing, task phrasing is crucial. Minor inaccuracies in a task's wording can lead participants to misinterpret what they are required to complete or affect how they carry out the task. The facilitator may read the task instructions to the participants, or they may be given to the participants on writing in task sheets. Participants are often asked to think aloud while completing tasks, allowing the facilitator to follow their progress, knowing which task the user is completing and that the participant has read the instructions correctly. There are different usability testing. Let's explore them now. First, qualitative usability testing aims to gather insights, results, and narratives about how users interact with the product. Qualitative usability testing is the most effective method for identifying issues with the user experience. Compared to quantitative usability testing, this type of testing is more prevalent. On the other hand, the goal of quantitative usability testing is to gather metrics that capture the user experience. Task success and time on task are two metrics frequently collected in quantitative usability testing. The most effective method for gathering benchmarks is quantitative usability testing. Depending on the type of study, different numbers of people are required for a usability test. The Nielsen-Norman Group advises utilizing 5 participants for typical qualitative usability research of a single user group to identify the volume of a product's issues. Let's now cover other types of usability testing. Usability testing can be done online. Online testing is popular because in-person research usually requires more time and money. You can have moderated and unmoderated online usability testing. Online facilitated usability tests and in-person testing operate pretty similarly. In an in-person environment, the facilitator assigns the task speaking with the participant. But online, there is a physical distance between the facilitator and the participant. Facilitated tests can typically be held using screen sharing applications. In contrast, remote unfacilitated usability tests do not have the same participant-facilitator interaction. To set up written tasks for the participant, the facilitator uses online remote testing technology to deliver the tasks. The participant works alone and at their own pace to do the tasks. A session recording and metrics like task success are sent to the researcher when the participant completes the test. In this video, you learn to define usability testing, identify the players involved, and describe the different types of usability testing. Congratulations! You completed this module on Applied Design Fundamentals. In this module, you explored the Figma fundamentals and iterative design. It's now time to recap the key points and concepts you learned and the skills that you gained. You began the module exploring Figma. After you completed the first lesson, you are now able to use frames and layers, manipulate basic shapes, describe the principles of layered design. You also covered how to use type and text, and you can now describe responsive design and use grids and constraints. Finally, you learned how to manipulate elements and images and to describe design principles. After you covered some Figma fundamentals, you progressed to Lesson 2, where you focused on iterative design. In this lesson, you learned how to create wireframes from your designs and identify rapid prototyping tools and methods. Finally, you learned how to perform usability testing. You now have an understanding of some design fundamentals. You learned about Figma and how to use it to create wireframes, applying design principles and best practices. That's another important step in your UX/UI journey. Well done. You've designed your wireframes and you now want to make them beautiful. To do this, you now have to discover how carefully considered elements of design can enhance the final product. In the next couple of minutes, you will identify the use of images, colors, and shapes and their role in design. Consider design elements as necessary parts of a recipe, and like the recipe, to visually assemble a digital interface, these fundamental elements are crucial. Every component of a visual message is essential, and how they are combined affects how the design is interpreted. Depending on what you want to do, you can use either one of these aspects alone or a mix of them. The main elements are line, text, color, shape, graphic elements such as icons and images, and space. Let's take some time to explore each component's function and application in greater detail. The most fundamental element of design is lines. They come in a variety of colors, sizes, and shapes. Lines have direction, can be seen or not, and can assist in directing the eye to a certain area. A line's thickness can convey additional information. While bold and broad lines can catch the eye, Thin lines are the opposite. Depending on the meanings attached to them, colors can convey a variety of messages. And specific aspects of your design layout can be emphasized using color and lines. Now let's explore type. Web typography is comparable to print typography, but it also needs to take additional things into account to make reading easy across all screen sizes. To make reading enjoyable, there are some typographic elements that must be properly balanced. And these are typeface, type size, color, line height, and letter shapes. The next element is color. Did you know that all elements can be given color? Colors set the mood, and it is an effective tool for developing brand identification and evoking emotions. Color can also highlight particular parts of your design layout. The RGB and CMYK color schemes are used in design. The RGB color systems specifically used in digital design are red, green, and blue. Primary colors, when added together in various combinations, reproduce a broad array of colors. There are additional colors that are made up by combining several primary colors. Let's explore some more qualities of color. Color also has the qualities of hue, tint, tone, shaded, and saturation. Let's discover what they mean. Hue describes how closely or differently a hue can be compared to the primary colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So when you define a color as blue-green, you are using two hues to describe it. Tint is when a color can be tinted to make it lighter by mixing it with white. And tone is the process of muting a color by adding gray. Shaded is the next element, and this is when you create a shaded version of a hue by adding black. This graphic is an example of hues, tints, tones, and shades. The final color element is saturation. The intensity of a color is described by its saturation. When the saturation is reduced, the color seems faded, and lighter, while increasing saturation, makes it richer and darker. The terms light blue and dark green refer to variations in saturation. The next design element is shapes. Shapes have the ability to draw your attention to a layout. There are three types of shapes: geometric, organic, and abstract. Geometric forms typically have accuracy and are structured, for example, mathematical squares, circles, and triangles. Organic shapes usually lack sharp edges and feel smooth and natural. These shapes give a layout emphasis. Through abstract shapes, reality is presented minimally. A human stick figure is a good example of an abstract shape. And the majority of logos use abstract shapes to reflect the spirit of a company using abstract graphics. Images are also an important design element, as the user's experience can be improved by using a variety of media elements. The most popular and accessible medium is still visual, because images are practical, engaging, and simple to memorize and appealing to us. Images may draw in and direct the attention of your visitors, arouse feelings, and promote a sense of confidence if used wisely. The final design element is space. The area that a shape occupies is referred to as space. It also describes the background in which the shape or form is contrasted. There is positive and negative space. A design's area of interest is referred to as the positive space of the design, and the space around it is negative space. Let's explore an example. In this image, there is a white vase. This is the positive space. The black area around it is negative. There are also two faces in black in this image. This is also positive space, and the white then becomes the negative space. Elements in a design can be connected and/or separated using space. Narrower spaces link items to show connections between them, whereas wider gaps divide elements to show separations between them. Their link is enhanced by them overlapping. You have learned that a great product like the Little Lemon website not only has to be well made, but also has to look good. In this lesson, you have learned about the fundamentals of design elements and their role in design. Good work.
You had the wireframes for the app approved. Now you want to turn the wireframes into a high-fidelity design, or a design that closely resembles the final product. So, you add the Little Lemon branding to it. In this video, you will cover the steps from wireframes to a high-fidelity mockup. You received a brand style guide. It specifies every aspect of the look and feel of the brand. This includes typefaces, color palette, and how pictures and images should be used. It also includes a UI kit, which is a set of files that contains critical UI components like font sizes, icons, and documentation. Let me start by showing you how to create some styles based on the UI kit provided. First, open the UI kit. Now, I will start by creating the text styles. I select the display title on the UI kit and I go to the 4 dots on the right-hand side of the screen. I click Style, then I click the plus icon. I name it Display and click Create Style, and the style is created. The same process is repeated to create a color style. I have already created a color style for the yellow, but now I want to create a style for the green. So I select the green square. Then I go to the 4 dots in the Fill properties, click the plus icon and give it a name, Primary 1. I click Create Style and the style is created. My UI kit has everything that I need. Now let's move the wireframe and start adding some stylization to the wireframes. I bring the wireframes and I select the background on the first wireframe. I want to give it a color, so I click the 4 dots which bring up the styles already created, and I chose the green, or Primary 1. Next, I want to add style to the little lemon text on top. So, I select it, and I go to the right sidebar and select the display style. I also want to do this for the other text elements in this frame. After that, I want to change the color of the display text. I select Little Lemon and change it to yellow. I then change the color of the other text elements to white. Next, I need to style the button according to the UI kit, as it is black with squared corners. The UI kit states rounded edges with a radius of 16, so I change that on the right sidebar. And I also want to change its color. So I go to the Fill property and click the 4 dots and select Primary 2. I also changed the text color to black as white isn't very clear. What's needed now are images to be inserted. So I select the image box on the wireframe, click the Fill property on the right sidebar, and change the drop-down on top from Solid to Image. A checkered box appears, and it prompts to choose an image. I select the image and it appears in the element. I do this for the rest of the images. I click Fill and select Image again from the drop-down. Then I choose the Greek salad image, and I repeat this action for the 2 other images. The high-fidelity mockup is complete and has gone from wireframe to a stylized mockup. Why don't you try it out yourself?
Your client is delighted with how the Little Lemon website is coming together, informed by great user feedback. You now know that design systems have fantastic resources to generate flexible, consistent, and reusable designs for the users of the Little Lemon website. These are also a lot of work, so you have decided to create a smaller UI kit that you will then use to inform your design. In the next couple of minutes, you will learn about design systems and UI kits. You will also differentiate between the two and learn about best practice design for both. And finally, you will be introduced to atomic design. Let's start. In a previous video, you were introduced to design systems. You should now know that a design system is everything that goes into creating your product, including typography, colors, icons, layouts, grids, coding standards, and naming conventions. It can also be a guide on the tone of voice for your content, a style guide, and documentation for developers. A design system combines all of these in a way that enables your team to develop, learn, and work together. Some bigger design systems will have a set of rules and guides that aid the reader through do's and don'ts. Others are simply a set of components and files to inform design layouts. A UI kit is similar to a design system, but as its name suggests, it is limited to the elements and features that populate a user interface or UI. A UI kit still shows a systematic approach to design, for example, a typographic scale or a color system. It can list a set of buttons, menu items, or components, but it is not as thorough as a design system. For the scope of this course, you will use a UI kit. Let's consider this navigation bar, or nav bar, or menu. In a design system, this could be referred to as a navbar component. It is the primary navigation on the website. It comprises of a logo, some links, and a feature button to call attention to the Little Lemon's online ordering service. There is a space on the right with login and sign-up information and a search option. Now that you are more familiar with what design systems and UI kits are, let's explore atomic design invented by Brad Frost. This is a thought process of assembling design elements to create bigger design components. And it is explained through a scientific metaphor. Let's explore this in more detail. Atoms are individual elements like text boxes, form inputs, or links and buttons. You can think of these as HTML elements. Next, you have molecules, which combine atoms together. Think of an input box with a label. Inside, there is a profile icon with a link on the right that says Login. To the right of that, there is a button that says Sign Up. Organisms are up next. You guessed it. Organisms are groups of molecules. Think of a nav bar. Moving away from the science metaphor, let's explore templates, which are like low fidelity or basic wireframes that consist of all your atoms, molecules, and organisms together. Then you have pages, which are more specific refinements of templates. Think of actual content and images. This structured and ordered approach to composing layouts is granular for a reason. It enforces consistency and saves time with reusable elements. Think about a search bar. It is usually placed on the top of a web page or an app and displays similarly across most applications. This is almost identical to the login molecule, but with a different icon and label. As a UX UI designer and developer, you can now reference a single source of truth where all of your files are located in one space. In this lesson, you learned more about design systems and UI kits, and you were introduced to the atomic design process. Great job!
As your redesign of Little Lemon progresses, it becomes more complex. However, you can create components or elements that you can reuse across your design to make it more efficient. In this video, you will learn how to create a simple button component. Any layers or created objects can be turned into components. These include a wide variety of elements like buttons, icons, layouts, and more. A component has two characteristics, a master and an instance, which is a copy of the master. Don't worry about that now, you will cover that soon. Let's first check how you create a component. To do this, you must use slightly advanced Figma UI techniques. These are auto layout and component features. The first is the auto layout feature. This essentially converts whatever you are creating into its own frame, giving you more control and customization options. On the online order page, I created some category buttons for the menu items: starters, mains, desserts, a la carte, and so on. I created these manually by adjusting the background button shape to fit the text. This is how I originally created these categories. I duplicated the starters button and typed in mains. However, the button shape is too big. Auto layout will rectify this. I select the mains element and go to the right-hand panel and click the plus icon to create an auto layout, and the button shape automatically resizes to the size of the text. Now it is changed into an auto layout frame in the layers panel. The icon indicates that, and the properties are in the right sidebar. Now, if I hover over my text element, it has an outer box around it. This is the frame. Now, the button has padding or some space between the text and the top, bottom, and both sides of the text, which is adjustable. Then, I create a component from this button by clicking the Create Component icon at the top frame. It resembles 4 diamonds. This has now created a master component. You can create instances and variations based on this component. Now, let's make instances of this component. I can duplicate the button by pressing Ctrl-D on Windows or Command-D on Mac, or I can click and drag on the master button component and press Alt as I drag. The Layers panel shows that a second button was created, but the icon is a single diamond. This tells us that this is an instance of the master button. I rename it Yellow Button. I click on the Yellow Button instance and change the fill of the frame to yellow. The instance of only this button changed to yellow. Now I go to my master component. I change the radius to 8, and all instances will retain this change. The component master button is the master. If I want to change all instances, I do it from here. If I want instances to have individual characteristics, I do it inside that particular instance. In this video, you learned how to create a simple button component. I encourage you to keep exploring components by covering the readings on how to use these techniques to create a more complex card component.
A prototype is an excellent way for you to get valuable feedback. Adrian has asked you to create a prototype of the meal ordering process. In the next few minutes, you will learn how to create interactive prototypes using high-fidelity designs in Figma. These prototypes can be animated and shared with customers and colleagues for further testing and feedback. You may wonder what a prototype is. A prototype is an almost working model or mock-up of the product, which you use to test it with prospective users and stakeholders. Now that you have designed some of your UI layouts and have been populating your design system and UI kit, let's put it all together in an interactive prototype. Using interactive prototypes, you can show how the design will act in a way that is helpful in assisting others to understand what your design would look like and behave once the final product is built. First, the design needs to be created, which I have done here. I want to test some of the functionality, so I developed a scenario using Tilly, our persona, and I generate her user flow. Tilly is hungry after a long day at work. She opens the Order Online option on the Little Lemon mobile version of the website. Initially, she is not sure what she wants to order. She sees the bruschetta and wants a bit more information, so she taps on the bruschetta. This provides her with all the details she wants and options to customize it. She decides it's good just the way it is and adds it to her order and is given a summary and a breakdown of the price. She then spots an option to add more to her order and wants to have a look at the Greek salad. Once again, she is given the description and all the options to add other ingredients. Again, she decides that it's good enough as it is and taps Add. An updated order summary appears with an updated basket in the top right-hand corner. There are 2 items in the basket. Tilly sees she has 2 items and decides that she would like to order a dessert with that. She taps the back button, which returns her to where she can browse the other menu categories and see how many items are in her basket. Now let's see how we link these elements and screens using Figma. Click on the prototype link on the panel on the right next to the design panel. You will notice that a blue box with an arrow appears, and as well as a blue circular icon on the home screen frame. Select it. I want to select bruschetta. I double-click on the area until the relevant part is highlighted. I click the blue button on the right and drag it to screen 2. I have now linked these screens. The interaction details pop up on the right-hand side and it states navigate on tap to screen 2. Next, I link the Add button to screen 3. From here, I link the Greek salad element to screen 4. And then link the Add button to screen 5, which is the updated order summary, and from here I link the back button to the home screen too. Okay, now having completed the links, let's look at the interactive prototype by pressing the blue box with the arrow in it on the Figma canvas. This opens the prototype. I tap the bruschetta and I'm shown its details. I add it to basket and am brought to the order summary. I tap the Greek salad, see its details, which brings me to the updated summary. And when I click the back button, I return to the home screen. Success! You have now learned how to create a simple, interactive prototype in Figma. Adrian and the users were pleased with the prototype you provided. Congratulations! You learned how to create interactive prototypes using high-fidelity designs in Figma. These prototypes can be animated and shared with clients and colleagues for further testing and feedback. Good work.
You're ready to prepare the application for testing through an interactive prototype on Figma. You can create the prototype and share a link with users when you're ready for testing. Let's cover the prototype. First, I open my Figma file. Now I can scroll the category buttons horizontally and the dishes vertically. I can also toggle the categories on and off. Be mindful that it's beyond the scope of this prototype to make these dynamically filter the content, but it's a great starting point to facilitate a rich user experience for the test participants. Let's create both of those effects in Figma. To replicate this, I need to delete the current set of category buttons on the home screen, on the right-hand side of the Layers panel. I go to the Local Components page, which I've created to store my components. Let's create the Category Buttons Toggle Interactive component. To do this, I create an Auto Layout button and convert it into a component. Then, click the Component button and name it Master Button. I hit Enter. Now, I right-click this component, go to Main Component, and then Add Variant. This is where I'll put in the variation. In this case, what happens when the user toggles or clicks it. A perforated outline appears. Now I want to style the variant. To do that, I select it, and in the label in the design panel, I type Selected. Then I hit Enter. Now I customize its appearance, select the button, and change the fill to a darker color. Next, I double-click into the text and then change the fill of the text to a lighter color. Now I want to prototype what happens between the two states. Click the Prototype tab on the right. Double-click on the first instance. Drag the prototype icon to the second one, and the Properties tab appears. You'll see On-Click change to the selected icon. Now, I want to double-click and drag the second property up to reverse the process. So, when this one is clicked, it will go to the selected version. This is how to toggle between two states. Let's get this onto our prototype and see how it works. I'm going to go to page 1 on the left-hand panel. I go to the Assets tab beside it and type in Master Button. The button shows up. I drag this onto the auto layout under Order for Delivery. Let's test it now. I click the Present Prototype button, and the button changes when I click it. Perfect. Let's make some more category buttons. I select the button and duplicate an instance of the button component by pressing Ctrl or Command D. The button duplicates, but they are stacking one on top of each other. This is happening because the parent auto layout frame is set to stack vertically. I'm going to select both buttons and make these an auto layout frame. Then, in the Auto Layout Properties panel on the right, I can change their direction. I can duplicate as many of these category buttons as I want. I type into each one to give them unique titles. I gave each one a new label. Next, I want to make a horizontal scroll. I double-click the frame. I can see it's called Frame 5. I'm going to rename it to Dish Category. I want to limit the amount that these buttons can scroll within the screen. To do this, I double-click to get into the frame and convert it into a component. Then, I right-click and choose Frame Selection. I scale it from the right-hand side to snap to the edge of the device window. This creates the overflow edge. I select the Prototype tab and click on Overflow Scrolling. Then I click on Horizontal Scrolling. Let's check it. Now the category buttons toggle on and off, and I can scroll left and right. I repeat the process to scroll the dishes vertically. To share my prototype, click the Share button, copy the link, and share it with the test participants.
I think a fun fact about interactions is just how often you encounter them when you're using an app, most of the time without realizing them. Micro interactions are meant to be very simple and clear, so you might not even notice that you're exiting out of a dialogue or you're seeing confirmation that you did something on your app. Micro interactions are small interactions that you'll encounter many times when you're using an app. They serve a single purpose, and usually it's to bring more understanding to a flow that you might be going through, but it's also to bring a more emotional and human aspect to your app as well. Micro interactions make it clear to a user that an action they just took was successful, or it triggers them to complete another action or go to another step in a flow. They really bring a level of understanding to what the user is doing. One example of a micro interaction on Facebook.com is when you hover over the like button and you see a little bar of all the reactions you can take on a post. This micro interaction is really clear in what it's supposed to do. The user is supposed to tap one of the reactions so that they can quickly react to someone's post. It also brings a level of delight to the app as well. If you ever hover over the like button, you'll notice that the interactions are animated. So it kind of just brings a more fun and human aspect to using Facebook as well. Micro interactions benefit the user because they give them a really clear understanding of where they are in the app and if the system is in a good place. For example, if you're filling out a form and put in your name for, let's say, a price, you might see an error pop up on the form, and it's really clear to you that your action hasn't been submitted successfully and that you need to actually change the form input. If we didn't have a micro interaction there, you might not know whether you actually purchased that ticket or completed that flow successfully. So micro interactions are really important for giving almost a status to the user of, did you do this successfully? What should you do next? And giving feedback to the user. So a lot of micro interactions are actually conceptualized in the design process. Usually designers will design a certain flow end to end and have a different design for each screen of a flow, what should happen when you tap a certain button, and so on. Engineers build out these micro interactions, and sometimes we might realize there's a gap in some sort of interaction. When you press a button, nothing happens. So in the testing phase, we kind of realize where we need to add more micro interactions, or when a micro interaction is super annoying and not really beneficial to the user as well. Since joining Meta, I've seen how many micro interactions are used all over our products. Many I've used subconsciously. And when I'm building a product now, I'm really thinking about the things that happen when someone goes through a flow successfully, or what happens when there's an error that they might encounter. Luckily, here at Meta, we have a bunch of reusable components that we can use for micro interactions. An example is a toast. And a toast is something that appears in the bottom corner of your screen when you complete an action. So if I were to try to create a Facebook event and I do so successfully, a little toast with a green check mark would appear in the corner. If something happens, say your internet goes out and we're not able to create the Facebook event, a little toast will appear in the corner with a warning sign. So it's really clear to the user what's happened, and it brings a level of understanding to their experience as well. I would say my biggest piece of advice is don't overthink micro interactions. Sometimes people will learn how to do a really fancy animation and think that they have to include it in every single micro interaction on the site. I think the biggest thing about micro interactions is that they should be very clear and understandable. And most of the times that means simple as well. You don't want to include too many micro interactions, and you don't want to make the micro interactions that you do include very fancy and distracting for the user as well. Usually people don't think of micro interactions when they're trying to design a product, but it's really important that you think about them in the design process and also in the testing process. I use the product a bunch of times. I don't even notice when I'm missing a little confirmation toast or a little error dialogue. So it's really important that you think about these details and that you're putting your product in front of people so they can also see these gaps and you can close them as well. Best of luck learning more about micro interactions, and just know that they will bring your app to a high quality bar and make sure that users really understand the flows that they're going through on your new product or idea.
Congratulations, you've reached the end of the 4th module in this course. Let's take a moment to recap on some of the key skills you've gained in this module's lessons. In the first lesson, you learned how to enhance your design and should now be able to identify the use of images, colors, and shapes, and explain their role in design. In Lesson 2, you learned about UX/UI design principles. Now that you've completed this lesson, you're able to explain the importance of good form design, implement best practices to improve form design, Describe component-driven products and design systems. And explain how component-driven products and design systems deliver captivated audiences. You then moved on to the third lesson, in which you learned about prototyping, sharing, and testing your designs. Having completed this lesson, you're now able to create interactive prototypes using high-fidelity designs in Figma, and also describe how these prototypes can be animated and shared with customers and colleagues for further testing and feedback. Having completed this module, you should now be able to enhance your UX UI designs, apply good form design, how components are created in Figma, prototype and share your design. Great work! In this course, you learned about the principles of UX and UI design. Let's take a few moments to recap the key topics that you learned about. In the opening lesson, you covered an introduction to UX and UI design. During this introduction, you were able to differentiate between UX and UI, describe what UX is, its goals and quality components, and define UI and different types of design. You also got started with Figma and explored user-centered design and the concepts of empathy tools and persona in UX design. You then moved on to evaluating interactive design. In this topic, you explored evaluation methodologies and covered designing for accessibility. You also examined best practice principles of evaluation by studying practical examples of navigation and form design. You then progressed to learn about applied design fundamentals. In this topic, you explored the fundamentals of working with Figma and reviewed principles of iterative design, including wireframing, prototyping, and usability testing. Next, you moved on to explore designing your UI. Here you learned how to enhance your design and create component-based, high-fidelity designs. You also learned how to use mood boards and how to create design systems in Figma. Then you covered how to create a high-fidelity design prototype and include micro-animation in UI. Then you learned how to animate and test your prototype. After all that, you are now ready for your assignment, booking a table on the Little Lemon website to put in practice what you learned. Then you will take the graded assessment to try out what you learned in this course. Good luck! You've reached the end of this Meta UX UI course. You've worked hard to get here and developed a lot of new skills along the way. You're making great progress on your UX UI journey, and you should now understand the principles of UX and UI design. You were able to demonstrate some of this learning along with your practical UX UI skill set in the course assignment by creating a table reservation element for the Little Lemon website. Following your completion of this course in Meta UX UI, you should now be able to apply UX and UI principles while using a user-centered design approach. Evaluate interactive design using design methodologies and best practice principles. And apply design fundamentals in Figma. You should also be able to follow an iterative design process using wireframes, rapid prototyping, and usability testing. Create component-based, high-fidelity designs. Use mood boards. Create design systems in Figma. The key skills measured in the graded assessment revealed your competency in those topics. So, what are the next steps? This Meta UI course has given you an initial introduction to several key areas. You probably realize there's still more for you to learn. So, if you found this course helpful and want to discover more, then why not register for the next course? Whether you're just starting out as a technical professional, a student, or a business user, the course end projects prove your knowledge of the value and capabilities of UX UI. The final assignment consolidates your abilities with the practical application of your skills in UX UI. But it also has another important benefit. It means that you'll have a real design that you can reference within your portfolio. This serves to demonstrate your skills to potential employers. And not only does it show employers that you are self-driven and innovative, but it also speaks volumes about you as an individual, as well as your newly obtained knowledge. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to embark on this journey of discovery with you. Best of luck in the future.